I want to talk about limits, and we're just going to add on to what we've been doing, and we're going to talk about what happens when you have a triangle and an x together. We call that a delta x, and triangle x stands for the change. Delta and change mean the same thing. In these problems we're going to look at, though, we're just going to consider delta x to be a variable. So if I'm going to do this first problem here and delta x is 6, then all I'm going to do is take 6 and plug it in the places of delta x. So I would get 2 times 6 plus 6 squared, which will be 12 plus 36, and you get 48. Alright, in the next problem, delta x is approaching 2. Notice in the problem that we have an x and a delta x. All you do there is just know that this part is the 2, but I don't do anything with the x, so you would get 2x minus 3, plug in the 2. So that's 2x minus 6 plus 5, which is minus 1. And then that's the answer. It is okay for x to be in the answer, although that just hasn't happened yet in the problems that we've been looking at. It's almost like that there's two problems, or two variables here when you're dealing with delta x. Alright, in this problem, delta x is approaching 0. I can't just plug in the 0 for delta x, because that would be 0 on the bottom. So first thing I need to do is multiply out that delta x plus 2x squared. So I'm going to write it side by side just so that maybe it'll be easier for you to see. And I'm going to do full with it. So that times that would be delta x squared. Don't just square the x and the delta, but just put it all together as one thing. Alright, then outside would be 2x delta x. Again, don't put the x's together. They're two different kinds of variables. That one would be another 2x delta x. Sorry, I messed up there. There we go. And then the last one would be 2x times 2x, which is 4x squared. Bring down the 4x squared from the problem, because that first part is that. Here's our 4x squared over delta x. Still can't plug in the 0. I need to simplify a little bit. So we have delta x squared plus 4x delta x. Those are 0 over delta x. Still can't plug in the 0, but I can factor out a delta x. Those go away. And then finally I can plug in a 0 here, and so 4x is my final answer. Alright, one last problem. This is one of those common denominator problems. Do it very similar to the way we did it yesterday. We just need to get that common denominator. So I'm going to make the common denominator here be 1 plus delta x, which means I need the top to be 1 plus delta x. So after getting that common denominator, then I'm going to have 1 minus, this 1 minus goes to both things, so minus 1 minus delta x over 1 plus delta x, and then over delta x. So this is divided by delta x, which is the same as times 1 over delta x. Those will go away just like they do with the other variables. So you have a negative 1 on top, and you have 1 plus delta x on the bottom. There's where you can plug your 0, and you get negative 1. So the problems could have an x or they could not. It depends on whatever you have left in the problem. Here's your try problem for this one. You'll have to simplify a little bit and then factor out a delta x, I think, in the end to get to the final answer.